Hey, everybody, it's Jeff here once again with our Money Tracker podcast. Sorry, we got stumbled over myself today. We are kicking off. We were off for a week because I had my COVID shot and literally felt like somebody drove me over with a truck and then drove me over again. So we'll talk a little bit about that today. Tom's going to come on and talk a little bit about the 1-year anniversary of COVID. And a lot of the economics that are going on right now. We are also, it's Friday the 19th of March, and we are at what's called Quadruple Witching. So we'll talk a little bit about what that means and how that affects the markets. And then we'll have our most interesting thing, and Tom's definitely got a most interesting thing for us. So stick around. We'll be right back on with you. Hey, everybody, it's Jeff here with Tom Kemler from BKA Wealth Consulting. Hey, Tom, how you doing today?
Tremendous, Jeff. Beautiful day.
It is a gorgeous spring day, and we're one day away from spring actually springing. So enjoying the weather. It was a little crisper today, which is nice.
The vernal equinox.
Yes.
Awesome.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And spring's my favorite time of the year, except for I love fall too. So I'm completely convinced when people came here to Texas, they either came in the spring or the fall. If they came in the winter or the summer, they would have just kept on going. So.
That's for sure.
Yeah. All right, Tom. Well, we'll kick off, I guess, with what we were planning on doing last Friday and then weren't able to do it, the 1-year anniversary of COVID.
Yeah, and it's in a way, I'm not going to say ironic, but maybe illustrative would be a better word to describe. A year ago, I felt like that second Friday in March was the day. Mm-hmm. The night before, I was supposed to go to Chicago early that Friday, and I basically called it off mentally and didn't go. Made the actual call the next morning, but that night, the all hell broke loose when Tom Hanks got it, a couple NBA guys got it. The next thing you know, the NHL and the NBA had shut down, and it was just a series of dominoes about every 20 minutes, it seemed like.
Yeah,
and I think that was it.
For us in Austin, it was the shocking, cancellation of South by Southwest, on the eve of it starting,
and here we are a year later, and you've already gotten a vaccine,
mm-hmm.
and not only gotten a vaccine, but felt bad about it. But hopefully that's the pain for the gain.
That's exactly right. And it ended up being about 12 hours, and then I felt swimmingly after that. So, I would not be worried about taking the shot. Yeah, you're going to, whether it's the 1-shot deal or the 2-shotter, you're probably going to feel a little bit under the weather. But, once that kind of gets into your system, you feel perfectly fine. And I've not had any other issues since, and I'm happy because that just moves us one step closer to reopening the world.
And I'm going to continue to reiterate that it was over a month ago that I believed that we we're going to have herd immunity through a combination of survivors and vaccinated people, and I believe that would happen by the end of April. And I'm sticking with that. That's just doing the numbers, and it's a more aggressive prediction than I'm still hearing from anywhere else, but I'm sticking with it. So hopefully on your screen, you can see the COVID
Yep.
vaccine. This is a 7-day rolling average. And you can see that it's just, with a hiccup here in late February, which was related to some distribution problems. Otherwise, we're now 7 days on a 7-day basis, averaging about 2.5 million doses a day. Some of that's the single doses like what you got. Some of it is, the first dose of a pair. And, again, here's the USA stats for, and we're looking at, daily new cases. Again, the peak was, early January. We've had a dramatic slope downward. The same thing with the deaths, dramatic slope downward. So the question becomes, is it like a slope down here and then it resurged, and down here it resurged? And I'd say probably not. Again, I'm not an epidemiologist, but even they've shown themselves to have some clay feet in this whole deal. So I'll just say this, that that the way the numbers are trending, we're still looking at late April as being a period where you're going to have a majority of people in this country that have either survived the coronavirus and or had a shot of a vaccine.
Well, and I would say, more than anything, yeah, we may see cases pick up, but a significant majority of the population that is most at risk is going to have a shot or has had it at this point.
Yeah.
That's where we keep the deaths down. So yeah, we might see cases spike up, but that doesn't necessarily mean that, young, healthy people are going to get sick and die at the same rate as older people did.
No, and this that was never the case with this particular malady. So I think we're ready for, everybody's ready to get going. The markets are ready. The economy's ramping. So we'll take a look at a couple of things. You did mention, before we go into it any further, I've made this little chart because you mentioned quadruple witching in the markets. This is the fourth quadruple witching day that we've had since you and I have been doing these podcasts. And as you can see from this little diagram that I put together, uniformly, it's a down day. The NASDAQ was up very small amount on the June of 2020 quadruple witching day, but that's the only major index that was up. And what's important about this to realize is that from June of 2020, if you look at the numbers and where the averages were and where we are now, we've been in pretty much, there's been a couple of pullbacks. There was September, there was November, and then there was February, where we've had some pullbacks and some volatility. But for the most part, the markets have been ramping the entire year. So I just find it interesting. I've always felt like that quadruple witching was kind of a retrograde day. It was where stuff gets ledgers get leveled and wiped, slates are wiped clean, and it's just a day for maybe doing something a little bit different than what the market's been doing, and so it's been a profit taking day in a market that's been almost uniformly positive. And why has that market been positive? Well, for the most part, we've been having some great economic news, and my first economic news here is about housing. You and I have talked about housing, from how hot it's been. The housing prices have gone up because demand has gone up. Here's another, this is a headline that I got from Bloomberg, and we're talking about commodity inflation, and we've talked about inflation overall, and this is part of how it manifests itself. So you have simple things like wood and bricks that are at maybe decade long highs. So this is a threat to how, or it's just part, I guess it's how cycles end. And stuff gets too expensive. And so we've been talking about housing and the surge, and so I would put this as maybe a bit of a red flag, or at least a yellow caution, that we're starting to see inflation come in. It's manifesting itself not only in commodity prices, but we're also seeing it in the way interest rates are moving. Everybody talked about the retail sales number this week. If you were anywhere near the market, you heard about how horrible the retail sales were. And there was a couple of things about that. First of all, it was February. There was some weather related issues with what we were going through in Texas for a while, and other places in the middle of the country. It wasn't just us. It was pretty much, from Texas to North Dakota was just frigid. But the thing that struck me about the retail sales number, and I included it because, yes, you can see the actual number came in worse than the range. But if you look across the board, there were gigantic prior revisions that were of such a magnitude that they almost wipe out the negative. I mean, overall, they were up 2.3%, X vehicles 2.4%, X vehicles and gas 2.4%, and the control group, which was 2.8%. So if you take those numbers and knock them off there, you're pretty much at consensus.
Yeah.
So not a bad report, all things considered. We've talked about Redbook on and off. Retail sales is a number that's produced by the U.S. government. Redbook is a private group. What happened to my Redbook? Oh, I jumped past. Oh, import and export prices. I'll come back to that. I think this is better to be. Anyway, this is retail sales at chain stores, and this is in-store sales. And this is year over year. And now that we're looking at, you and I were talking about memorializing or annualizing what's happened with COVID, these sales are up. I mean, that's a monstrous amount. I've been following Redbook for years. You don't see 8% year over year gains in stores since the internet got started. It's really remarkable. So there is a lot of spending going on out there, and that retail sales number is going to probably be an anomaly. But back to this import-export price item, this was a report that came outside the consensus range for prices, and that relates more to what we were talking about with commodity prices and what have you related to housing. But you can see the import prices came in above consensus and above the entire range. Import prices year over year were the same, above consensus and above the range. And export prices, again, above the range. And the year over year export prices, I have never seen a year over year export price number that high. I don't know when I started following import and export prices. It's been about 20 years or so. I'm sure that you could go back to the 70s and maybe 80s and find when those numbers were higher, but I just don't ever remember seeing a number like that. And, again, I'm a homer for being, an American, and I want to see our export prices go up. And to see our export prices go up this much, and especially to exceed import prices by that much, it's a great thing. But it also says, how sizzling hot things are getting in the economy. The industrial production number, this was related to what we were talking about with the weather and retail sales. We had a month where industrial production was down quite a bit. It was below, even though the prior month had been revised upward, it wasn't revised up nearly as much as the retail sales were. And the actual numbers came in a lot lower. One of the things that comes out of this, and usually if you have bad weather, you'll see that this number has been tempered a bit because of utility production gets captured here. The problem was that when the utilities aren't working, you're not even getting that production. So we didn't have a lot of utilities that were working down here, as a lot of people knew about. Jobless claims, this was a little stronger than expected. So this was a negative. So we have some mixed things here. I think this is my last number. I had to include this Philly Fed number. I have never seen a number this big for
double the consensus. Jeez.
It was unbelievable. So the prior number was huge. I mean, and we've been talking about how numbers in the teens and 20s were huge. This is unbelievable. I might have to save this slide for like ever to see if it ever gets. I mean, I don't know if we're going to ever see. I mean, never say never, but that is a gigantic move for an index that was already white hot. So global shipping, we've been talking about it for a while. I am going to take a little bit of a victory lap. This is a headline from the New York Times. We beat the Times by months on this, so it's always good to beat them. But these are some of the another way of showing how when an economy gets too hot that you start to get problems. And one of them is inflation. This is a different kind of inflation. There's too much demand, so the ports are literally getting clogged. Port of Los Angeles just continues to seemingly get worse. I grabbed this headline. This was actually one from a couple of weeks ago that I grabbed last week, but it's not just the U.S. anymore. Singapore's in probably the worst shape that it's ever been in. I had to put this headline in. Bill Gross has gotten in on the GameStop, and he's gotten in on the hedge fund guy side. He's not with the Wall Street Bets crowd. He's been shorting GameStop by options. So, yay for Bill. Bill has never had he's never been shy about promoting himself.
Oh God, no.
So anyway, I was gonna just take a tour a little bit. I gotta stick up. Well, we'll look at Tesla here. I gotta try and do that. There we go. Get the Wall Street Journal on. What I wanted to do was highlight this headline right here, because this to me could have been the most interesting thing, and maybe from a business perspective, it probably is. For people who've been following, the U.S.-China relationship has been a tough one for a while, and this week we had a meeting between our Secretary of State and his equivalent up in Alaska, and his equivalent from the Chinese government, and by all accounts, the meeting was a disaster. Yeah. The Chinese spared no. I don't even know what to use the word. They didn't even bother to be diplomatic. If you read the Global Times, which is the Chinese Communist Party's mouthpiece in a lot of ways, the Global Times criticized everything about the meeting, and really ranked on everything, including the choice of Alaska, because they said it was so cold and nasty up there that it was a sign of the Americans' lack of wanting to be hospitable.
I had to admit that I thought the same thing. I'm like, I have friends from Alaska, and you're still wearing a jacket in July. So why on earth would you choose the coldest place in America to hold something?
I guess if you look at a globe, it's and you put a string on the globe from DC to Beijing, it comes pretty close to Alaska. So as a halfway point. So I guess maybe somebody was
There's
thinking
another
about,
halfway point called Hawaii that would have probably been a little bit nicer. So,
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it could have been. I mean, we're sending a negative message too, and so this is not good. I don't think, because you see a headline like this, and I've watched the way Tesla has picked fight. I mean, not Tesla. Excuse me. It involves Tesla. I've watched how China picks fights with other countries. They started on Australia. They started with coal. And they are, slowly trying to strangle Australia for having the impertinence of being independent. They're picking on Canada because of the Huawei executive extradition situation. And so they start with a very carefully calibrated rifle shot. And so I think if you're a Tesla shareholder, which I know you are, this should be a concern for you for a couple reasons. The first is that Tesla makes a lot of money in China. They've had quarters where all of their profit comes from China. So if China, if they know this and they're going to tweak one of our most valuable companies in terms of market cap, and they're going to do it by saying, well, if you work for the state or the military, we have concerns about the cameras and the data uploads that the cars have to somewhere outside of our country. We think it might be a spy thing. Well, that may be true. I don't know, but I mean, the fact that they've decided to highlight this, I think could be reckoned as possibly a situation where they kick Tesla out of the country. Not going to say they're going to do it right away, but as I've followed China, they will tip over a domino like this right off the bat and see where it goes. And if it's got leverage, they're going to stay on it. So very important to keep keep that in mind, because here's the actual headline that and story, and this is not, if you Google this right now, it's a Wall Street Journal exclusive, but I'm sure that once they release the exclusive part of it, that they're going to have you'll see other networks will pick that up and media outlets. This is the stock. It's not really doing anything today. It's down 30 cents, which is crazy. I would think that that's a lot more worse news. And again, on a quadruple witching day, with all of the massive amounts of underlying trading that's going on, sometimes it almost doesn't matter what's happening, fundamentally, because so much stock changes hands. And just to put things in perspective, the volume in terms of shares on a quadruple witching day is about double the normal volume of shares on a regular business day. So think of that as like almost an extra day jammed in, which is basically nothing but traders having to clear their books. And so that may be the case. Do want to take, before we leave, our 10-year Treasury note now up to 1.72%. This is what it's done over the past year. This was about where we were right here when we made the call in mid-August that it was going up, and we are up.
Quite a bit more from where we.
Up, yep. And last but not least, now we showed the Atlanta Fed. This is their GDP Now product, which is pretty interesting because, you know, when we last visited this a few weeks ago, you know, they were predicting first quarter GDP was looking like it was over 9%. It's come down quite a bit in the last couple of weeks, down to about 5.5%, whereas the blue chip consensus still seems to be kind of on a upslope, and you know they might run into each other.
Mm-hmm.
And last but not least, I think that we have to go for the most interesting thing. Oh, this was my testy exchange in Alaska, more confrontational China. This was a headline from the New York Times today. So I actually had it, but you know, these are storm clouds.
They haven't been up or haven't been confrontational up to this point. So.
Yeah, well, they have. You know, the thing that's been interesting though, that I've seen, and it's you know, well, there's a number of things. I mean, you know, this is one of the most important issues in I think in the world today is is the ascendant China and U.S. and all of the various facets of it. So there's incredible nuance and incredible detail that you can look at, but you know, so we can only take a 30,000 foot view of it. But one of the things that's interesting is that there's almost no bipartisanship in the U.S. Congress except on China. You can have liberal Democrats and Freedom Caucus Republicans both say that we've got to get tougher with them. What I've seen that's interesting with the new administration as opposed to the previous administration was the previous administration was all about tariffs and getting a trade deal done, and at the same time praising the people involved. So you would hear Trump, he would say that he had a good relationship with President Xi, even though I don't really think he did. Yeah. But he was going out of his way to say this isn't personal, this is just business. And what we're seeing out of the current administration is they don't seem to care what they're messaging. They're much more coarse, you know, where they're, and maybe that's I mean, everything's by design, but they're not bothering to sugarcoat it as saying, well, you know, the leadership are, you know, they're good guys, but they're kind of boxed in. So we're now saying that, like, look, you guys are committing all sorts of atrocities in Xinjiang. You're throwing your weight around in the South China Sea. You're not trading fairly, and we're not going to sugarcoat it. So hopefully for Tesla shareholders that doesn't get caught in the what do you call it? That doesn't get caught. What happened to my final? I have one more thing here.
Denied.
I had the most interesting thing, and I am not seeing where I can find it. That's terrible. Why don't you
go?
So I just thought, you know, as for the most interesting thing, I couldn't help but put this picture out here because this is an actual website, and I don't know who put it out there. I don't think it's her, but I did think it was interesting that there was all sorts of controversy after her and Harry's interview with Oprah Winfrey a week or two ago. But one of the things that came out of it was that there seems to be an honest and this is not tongue in cheek, this is not Babylon Bee, this is not The Onion, that her people really seem to be wanting to put together a some kind of campaign for her to run for president. She feels like the Oprah Winfrey interview went so well that she can capitalize on that and become the leader of the free world. I will hazard a guess here on March 19th of 2021. I know that a lot of crazy things can happen in this world, but Meghan Markle will not be elected president of the United States in 2024. Not going to happen.
Probably a pretty safe bet there, bud.
Not going to happen. I do think it's amazing though that she feels like things are going swimmingly enough that she can even actually put this out there.
Yeah.
So there you have it. A little fun on a Friday. Harry would. I'll say this: it may be even money as to whether or not there will be a Harry and Meghan by 2024.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But that's just.
Well, it's interesting. If you look at this thing, though, it was Markle 2020, and it's how to vote for a write-in. So maybe this was for the 2020 election and not necessarily for the upcoming election. So.
Yeah, and I would bet that, I mean, this is just Meghanforpresident.com.
Yeah.
This could have been put together by a spoofster. So I'm not saying that this is the website to go to.
Yeah.
I just grabbed the picture because the headlines were that she's actually considering this.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what an effort like this might look like.
Just a couple more Oprah interviews and she'll be there.
But I think that if I want to wrap up today, though, I think that, to put a bow on it, we're starting to see some real signs of overheating in this economy. And it's the ports congestion, the inflation that we're seeing in commodities, the interest rates, and we didn't even mention the gigundous stimulus bill that just got passed that put more money out there in all sorts of places. I think the equity markets are going to continue to react positively to all of this positive news. And so it's not going to be something that's going to be a negative for a while, but we're starting to see some signs of what's going to happen to ultimately rein it in.
Yeah.
So, and again, I think this is terrible news for bondholders to have a hot economy and to go and say, well, let's dump another 2 trillion on something that's already cooking.
Mm-hmm.
So to the extent that people have a lot of treasury bonds, if you have a treasury bond, you need to turn this graph upside down because this is the price of your bonds. The way that yields go up is that the price of bonds goes down and you pay less to get the same amount of income, and therefore your yield goes up. So that's how yields go up. Prices go down.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see continued pressure on the Treasury because, if you look at how much we've already done, adding it all up, we've already done $5 trillion for COVID, maybe more.
Yeah.
Something, at least 5 trillion. Europe has done less than $1 trillion.
Yeah.
Now you could argue that they maybe need to do more, but it's so lopsided that it really is remarkable. And so just from a supply and demand consideration, that if you think about it, $5 trillion just floods that many more dollars out there and creates that much more debt that has to be funded. And if you're a fixed income investor, first of all, European bonds are yielding less than ours, and so they're much harder to get, and the supply and demand is such that they've bid the prices of them up quite a bit, whereas there's just a virtual flood of them here, and pushing yields down. I mean, pushing yields up and prices down.
Yeah.
So that's kind of it. This is starting to look like, end of cycle type things, where you could see the stock market doing really well and the bond market not doing so well, until all of a sudden the market, we had a little flivver a couple of weeks ago where we got worried about the bond market, and I likened it to, cleaning out your chimney, and you go up a little bit and some stuff falls down, and then you go up a little more and stuff falls down. We're still in that phase. But at some point we're going to have the chimney clean, and then it's just going to be like, rates are going to go to a point where it really will affect not only the markets but the economy, and I don't think we're anywhere near that yet.
Yeah, but potentially could be, and we're seeing rates go up. Well, and I mean, I think more than anything, as we talk about real estate, I mean, more than anything, this starts to affect affordability, and especially those, we've got folks moving here to Austin that are plunking down, 15-20% more than what a house is really truly worth. And, it's just making it more and more unaffordable for people that are in this market already. And I think it's going to put some huge pressure on the real estate market eventually here.
Oh yeah, I mean, without a doubt. And that's in addition to what we're seeing with the commodities, commodity prices, interest rates. But yeah, a lot of people from that are relocating here from the blue states that are more expensive. They've got, if you're moving here from California, you get $2 million house, you can buy the same thing for 500,000.
Yeah.
So you're like, oh, well, I mean, this guy's in the way. What's another 40, 50 grand on this bid? I've got cash. And so, yeah, it is distorting our market. For me, and you, if we're not necessarily in the market, what it does, it's the time of year where we're about ready to get our county appraisals for real estate. I just keep going. I go up the limit. Thank goodness that Texas puts a 10% limit on housing price increases for tax purposes every year, because I just go up to 10% every year. It's just, it's locked in. And I have no doubt that that's going to be the case again this year.
Well, they were weaseling around it a few years ago, because it's funny. I think my last two that have gone up they basically kept my house flat, and they raised the land, which you can't go to. You basically can't argue.
That's an interesting angle.
It's a very interesting angle, because it's like, okay, yeah, my house hasn't gone up at all, which I could argue against. It's the land, and I can't argue against that at all, which is somewhat annoying.
Yeah, that's also a Trojan horse too, I'll bet. Like they jam that up, and then they'll leave it alone for a few years and go to work on your house.
Yeah.
So I just know that the total, it just is like, whip out the calculator. Yep, 10%.
Yeah, right on the money every time. Yeah.
So think about that, 10% every year, it's going up. And we're talking, when we're looking at other things like, I was making a big deal out of Redbook going up 8% year over year. Export prices up 5% year over year. In a world where there's still really not that much inflation. I mean, we're talking about it, but in a world without that much inflation, what's the most inflating thing?
Yeah. Your largest asset. is inflating at 10%. The value of your taxes on it are inflating
Exactly.
a year. So yeah,
Oh,
that's the shocker, I think, for some of the folks moving here from California. Yeah, you're not going to have an income tax anymore, but welcome to now you've paid a ridiculous amount for your house. You've raised, all the other people have raised that value up, and you're getting a 10% whack on your really expensive house from now on out.
well, the other thing about, and again, I know California, they passed that proposition, was it 13, I think it was called, back in the 80s, that limited how much you could tax houses.
Yeah.
So one of the reasons why California got, such expensive properties was that, that they weren't paying that much in property taxes. So it's not a huge thing. I mean, if you really bank 2 million on a house and you buy a house here for 500, 550, 600, the amount of taxes isn't going to kill you, the difference, but it is going to probably open your eyes that we're, our taxes. Actually, that should be the message that I should have. Don't move here from California. Our property taxes are
just too high.
They're going to kill you.
Stay where you're at. Don't move here.
Anyway.
And we won't build roads, because if we build roads, you'll move here. So we're not building roads. We want to be weird. All right, my friend. Well, thank you so much for that. And fortunately, we were able to find the most interesting thing, which was very funny.
Yeah.
Folks, we thank you all for joining us once again. We're on all the podcast channels, wherever you're watching us. If you would please give us a rating, we would love a 5-star in any case. In addition to that, if you've got any comments or questions, or things you'd like for us to cover on any show, please feel free to make some comments in the comment section. We respond to those right away, and would love to have some questions come out there. So we'll see you soon. We do this 2 times a week, Wednesdays and Fridays. Fridays are always with Tom, and Wednesdays we kind of swap around with several different people that are in our sphere of influence. And we've got an upcoming one. Stay tuned. We're going to have our friend with Pierre Accounting, Eric Pierre, is going to be talking about basically the tax credit you get for retaining employees during this whole COVID episode. And it's a very substantial tax credit that you really need to keep your eyes on. So be keeping an eye out for that. It'll be out in the next couple of weeks, and we will see you back here next week.
Happy vernal equinox.
Happy vernal equinox to you.